I didn't realize how much it was all worth. And it's even worse in RuneScape 3. The party hats are worth $42,000 apparently, and that was a year ago. Buddy, that's a down payment on a home. What?
This paper crown is completely useless, but cost 6,000 US dollars and was 42,000 a few years ago. This is the story of RuneScape's party hats and how they went from holiday trash to the most coveted items in the game. Our story starts in October of 2001.
Dude, these things were worth a good bit of money when I was playing the game for like a few months in middle school. But then I got like a Santa hat and Halloween mask and stuff like that. And then they weren't worth that much. So we always just sold them for gold. And then like the next year I was like, wait a minute, that Santa hat that I had last year that I just like sold for gold for like 50K is now worth like 5 mil. What do you mean? And I got so mad.
RuneScape's co-founders and Jagex owners, the Gower brothers, wanted to do something
gang,
special to celebrate Halloween. They decided that on October 31st, they would scatter pumpkins all across the game world. Andrew Gower could also be found in Falador dropping pumpkins at random
My bad. I muted the glass blowing. Okay. Sorry, guys. I thought some of y'all like to hear that.
during this time. Players who found them could pick them up, trade them with their friends, and even eat them. Most players chose to eat the pumpkins as they would heal 14 hit points, 2 more than lobsters, which were fairly expensive at the time. However, many players ignored the pumpkins, dropped them a few days after Halloween, or just slowly ate all of them. With bank space limited to just 48 items, few players bothered to hold on to any. Both the players and the Gowers had no idea that pumpkins would one day be worth $140 each. Pumpkins were RuneScape's first ever limited time drop. After October 31st, pumpkins would
Supply
never be
and
spawned
demand,
again.
boys.
So as RuneScape took off in popularity, their price would seemingly go nowhere but up. But for now, they were virtually worthless, even considered junk by some. Regardless, players were happy with the event. It was a fun, festive way to celebrate Halloween in RuneScape. So for Christmas, Jagex decided to do another limited time drop. On Christmas Eve, when players logged in, they'd be greeted with rainbow flashing text that said Merry Christmas, and all around them on the floor were a new item called Christmas crackers. Players who picked them up could use them on another player to crack them open.
Dude, I'm so sad that I started playing RuneScape after this happened. I started playing, I think, the year after this, and they did Santa hats instead of the crackers where people were getting the party hats, and I was so sad.
One player would receive a random item, while the other would receive a party hat, which they would promptly throw in the garbage. At the time, party hats were worthless junk. You really wanted to be the player that got the random item out of the cracker, because it could be anything from coal to the valuable rune plate body. Party hats provide no benefit to your character when worn, and again, with bank space being so limited, nobody wanted to waste 6 slots on silly paper hats.
Dude, if only we could go back in time, guys, and buy all the party hats in Bitcoin. Ah.
As you know, those players would be making a huge mistake, but they wouldn't know it for a while. Sort of like how you don't know about Watcher of Realms, a next-gen fantasy RPG available on mobile OS, and experience the Way of the Samurai. The Christmas event was another success, and the Gower brothers wanted to continue the trend of dropping limited time items on holidays. On March 31st, 2002, they would drop Easter eggs to celebrate, well, the 2-year anniversary of The Matrix, of course. This time, more players held on to them than previous drops because the bank could now hold 96 items, or 144 if you paid.
Bro, this is the OG bank. It's just 3 dudes in there walking around in an empty building.
For membership. Like pumpkins, they weren't entirely useless as they healed 11 hit points. And who would say no to free food when you have so much space for it? On October 31st, 2002, Jagex would drop 3 different colored Halloween masks to celebrate the holiday. This event was functionally the same as previous ones, but players' attitudes towards it were very different. By now, most of the player base had realized that old holiday items wouldn't be re-releasing, since pumpkins didn't return for Halloween. Halloween. So they would hoard these new masks in hopes of getting rich off of them in the future. Over
Those
the last
Halloween
few
masks,
months,
bro.
party hats and Christmas crackers had risen in value by a fair amount. Generally, they were all selling for around 100,000 to 200,000 gold. Unlike pumpkins and Easter eggs, party hats were a wearable sign of wealth that could be shown off. So there was a fair amount of demand for them, especially since the player base had grown a lot since their release. There were thousands of players who weren't playing when party hats released that now wanted them. Now, Jagex didn't like that holiday events had turned into a time of hoarding wealth. So, on December 25th, 2002, along with dropping Santa
I got
hats
these.
for Christmas,
I had one of
they would
those.
ask players to be generous with them. If you manage to get more than one, then please consider giving them to your friends as Christmas presents. Of course, you can sell them, but
Hell
that's
no.
not really the spirit of Christmas. As you might have expected, players didn't listen. The only thing rarer than a limited time holiday item was a player willing to give one out for free. Jagex knew they needed to make a change to how these drops worked. On April 20th, 2003, Jagex would drop bunny ears all over RuneScape. The smell of money was in the air, and players logged in excited to stock up on an item that would surely make them rich in a few years. They'd pick up their first pair, but when they went to pick up a second, they'd receive a message in their chat box.
There was ass, bro. We were all so excited because we thought we were going to get the next party hat. And Gajek just chopped us off at one.
You don't need another set of bunny ears, you only have one head. Not only had Jagex limited each player to only owning one pair of ears, they were also untradable, meaning—
You didn't play back then, Logup? Yes, I did, bro. Yeah, I used it to look up my account. Dr. Zeta Man. Okay? Look me up, bud. I did play. I was level 88.
They were impossible to buy and sell. Although this would lead to some complaints, it solved the
80
problem
cooking,
of players
76
hoarding the
fishing.
items and still let them have a bit of fun. On October 31st, 2003, the holiday drops would continue with the Scythe, an item that you could once again only own one of and not trade. But this time, there were a lot more complaints. Scythes were dropped at times when most of the United States was still asleep. Since they couldn't be traded, that meant most players had missed out on Scythes forever. But Andrew Gower, for the first—
I'm not delusional like that Zaryu guy thinking that he had 99 in his stat. I remember what my highest stat was. I could fish and cook sharks, and I got into the fishing guild. I remember that. I did lobsters for like 3 weeks.
Time ever gave in to the complaints and would drop Scythes again on November 2nd at more US friendly times. In the background, past holiday items had continued to rise at an astounding pace. Christmas crackers were now worth a shocking 20 million gold, and party hats sold for 4 to 18 million depending on the color. Every other rare item was still less than a million though, as they either couldn't be worn and shown off or had been hoarded. Party hats were seemingly going nowhere but up, but they were about to lose all of their value. In November of 2003, a player named 6 Feet Under was attempting to find a way to trade scythes using a RuneScape cheating program called AutoRune. Ultimately, he was unsuccessful, but in the process, accidentally discovered a glitch that would allow him to make just about any item in the game out of thin air as many times as he wanted. He shared this glitch with a few friends, and just hours later, they had created and dropped thousands of Christmas crackers and party hats. Jagex was furious and banned the accounts of everyone involved and attempted to remove any cheated in items from the game, but a lot of them slipped through the cracks. Overnight, party hats and Christmas crackers would plummet in value to near worthless. When the dust settled a few days later, they bounced back to around 2 to 6 million GP.
I'm not even kidding you guys. I think I remember this. I think I remember the crash of the party hat value and everybody was like buying them for really cheap. I think I remember I was at the bank in Barak and I just kind of have like a vivid, faint memory of this.
But the glitch had changed their rarity forever. The purple party hat was previously the most expensive party hat, as it had the lowest pull rate from Christmas crackers. But because the glitchers created so many,
guys, it seems like I watched this video because we did watch the behind the scenes of how they did this. He explained this exact thing in another video, but he's reusing it for this video's purpose.
It is now the most common party hat and would be the least expensive one for about
The auto rune
next
video,
2
yeah.
decades. Instead, the second rarest party hat you could get from Crackers, the blue party hat, would now be the most valuable. This is the party hat I'll be putting my main focus on the rest of the video, as I think its price is the most interesting.
Honestly, the
Other
blue party
rare
hat's the
items
best.
were largely unaffected by this glitch, as glitchers really only went for the most valuable items. However, Andrew's festive mood had been soured, likely due to the duplication glitch and all the complaints Jagex would get every time they would do a holiday drop. On
Blue
December
party hat
22nd, 2003, he announced that there wasn't going to be a drop on Christmas
People
that
try to
year.
say I don't have a blue
Instead,
party hat.
The team would focus their efforts on the soon-to-be-released RuneScape 2. In the background, party hats would slowly begin to rise again. Most of them recovered to their pre-glitch values by March of 2004, but would crash again when RuneScape 2 launched. The game had tons of new content to do, much of which required gold, so players had less of an interest in useless collectibles. But by the fall of 2004, they would begin climbing in price again. This is when a group of merchants would band together to try and influence prices to climb even higher. Merchants are basically players who would buy an item at a lower price from a player and sell it to someone else at a higher price.
I used to do this.
Merchants, well, good merchants, were
I used to do this. I used to go from the West Bank, buy it at the West Bank, go sell it at the East Bank for more. Buy low, sell high.
and still are some of the wealthiest players in the game.
I
By
did that.
buying up a ton of party hats and a bit of social engineering, they were able to increase the price of each party hat by a few million gold. It wasn't a huge success, but proved that market manipulation like this was possible and would lead to more attempts in the future. By December of 2004, the prices of Christmas crackers and most party hats would finally recover to their pre-glitch values. But this was short-lived. They would all crash again due to something merchants nicknamed the trust drop. After their first successful merge, they had continued to manipulate the market and believed that prices fell because they had manipulated it too much. Rares had become too valuable and would spend the next few months declining to correct. On the bright side, Jagex would begin giving out holiday items again, but this time they were not only untradable, but they would be available for 2 weeks instead of 1 day. That way, if you were stuck at family gatherings or church all day on Christmas, you wouldn't miss out.
Not
In
Ash.
mid-2005, the price of rare items would absolutely explode upwards. In just 1 month, the Christmas cracker jumped in price from 25 million gold to 85 million, while the blue party hat would jump from 30 to 75. Players attributed this huge jump to a few things. First was the recent release of the Barrows minigame. Barrows introduced 24 new pieces of armor into the game, all of which were going for incredibly high prices the first few weeks. Perhaps the players who got lucky early on traded in their loot for a party hat. Slayer had also been released earlier in 2005, and players were now reaching the later levels, which would unlock new monsters with valuable drops. All at the same time, merchants were also trying to manipulate the price of party hats again. However, I think the most important factor is actually inflation. Just like real life, RuneScape's economy also has inflation. The price of 1 million gold in 2003 on underground markets was around $8 to $10, and by 2005 had lowered to about 5 to 7. More people were playing the game than ever, and as a result, gold was entering the game much faster than previous years. Combine all these factors and
Wait, 1 million gold right now, boys, is what? Like 50 cents? 70 cents? Like 20 cents? Okay. 1 million gold, like 20 cents now.
it absolutely makes sense why prices skyrocketed. They would drop quickly in the coming weeks, but they still settled for much higher than before. Around this time, something kinda odd would happen. For the first time, a party hat would be consistently worth more than the Christmas cracker, the blue party hat. This is because it was both one of the most desirable colors and, like I mentioned earlier, the second rarest one to get from crackers. Think of it like how a first edition Charizard sells for more than the packs it comes from. You could get a Charizard by opening a pack, but the odds
I had
are
one of
low,
those, dude.
So people will just
I had one of these too. You guys might think I'm capping. I opened one of these from a pack when I was a kid, and I showed it. I had it in my Pokemon collection book, and I showed it to this fat kid. I didn't like this kid, and I showed it to him because I wanted to make him jealous, and he's like, "No way!" And then he tried to grab it out of the sleeve, and he creased it, bro. He creased my Charizard trying to rip it out of the sleeve and run away with it. I've never been so mad. I've never been so mad in my life. Imagine someone just tried to steal your Charizard as a kid, and now that same freaking card is worth like 50K or 100K or some shit. Like, dude, that's crazy.
Spend more money to get the card they want instead of gambling for it. Throughout the rest of 2005, rares would continue to rise in value to heights never seen before.
Thank you for the 26
months. By the end of the year,
months.
the blue party hat was worth a whopping 100 million GP. Again, I'd attribute this to merchants, the rising player base, and inflation, but by now, rares were running into a new problem. In the last few years, thousands of them had disappeared from the game forever. Many players had lost their rares by dying while wearing them, getting banned, forgetting their passwords, and even accidentally casting the high alchemy spell on them, which would turn them into 1 GP each.
Dude, you guys know how like your grandpa, he's like telling you stories like, yeah, when I was a kid, you know, I had the very first Camaro, and you know, I was the fastest car anyone had ever seen, and like I broke the speed record, and like he's like telling you stuff, and you're like, all right, grandpa, you know, like that's cool. Now all the stuff that I'm doing, like, there's going to be actual proof, bro. Like, I'm glad, like, y'all are lucky that there wasn't proof for this stuff back then. But now, everything that I'm doing now, for, like, the past 10 years, I got proof of all of it. Because, like, some of you guys, I'll tell you guys, like, yeah, I was on The Walking Dead and Stranger Things. Like, I've been in a lot of these shows, you know, Marvel shows, like, what is it called? Whatever, blah, 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 blah. Civil War, Captain America was in that one. And you guys will be like, yeah, right, buddy. But like now I can actually show you. So it's different. Okay. Cause you guys doubt heavily everything I say, but I don't really cap. I don't really cap like that. I be telling y'all straight facts, but y'all don't believe me.
The last one is just tragic, but it did happen. It's part of the reason a little warning screen pops up whenever you try and alch something valuable these days. Throughout 2006, party hats would continue to rise, but there were a number of updates that would disrupt the market. First was the launch of skill capes. Every skill in the game now had a cape that you could only wear if you were level 99 in that skill. Owning even one of these was a huge flex. People would offload their valuable items to pay for the materials needed to reach 99 in the more expensive skills. Third Age armor would also launch this year. Incredibly rare armor, mainly worn to show that you're wealthy, that could only be earned by completing treasure trails or by buying it from someone else. Both of these updates would cause rares to be a little bumpy in 2006, but nothing could truly stop their rise. By the end of 2000,
guys, I am a firm believer that MMOs need limited time drops to show OG status. I don't care if it makes the account worth lots and lots of money, worth IRL dollars. I think it's one of the coolest things that a classic MMO style game can have. It's like very nostalgic, and it shows that you were there. It shows, you know, it makes you proud to be old. Like, I ain't gonna lie, if I had a party hat, I'd be proud of being old right now. Like, it wouldn't even matter. And that's just one thing that makes life better, is having that OG status, okay? We need shit like that.
2007, the minimum price you would be paying for a party hat was 150 million GP for a purple, but the blue party hat was a jaw-dropping 430 million. They would all continue to rise through 2007, and by November of that year, blues were now 550 million gold. But a few updates no one saw coming were about to destroy the party hat market. The duel arena in the last few years had become one of the most popular
The gambling addicts, look at all of them.
Activities in Runescape. Here, you could fight other players in 1v1 combat for fun or for money. You could wager items or GP before starting a duel, and whoever won would receive both players' wagers. Party hats had become extremely popular items to wager duels with. If you've been playing RuneScape for a while, I'm sure you remember seeing videos of these high-stakes duels back in the day. Not only were they exciting to participate in, other players just couldn't look away, especially if it was a Nightmare RH video. Now, the Duel Arena was also a big source of real-world trading. Many of the biggest Duel Arena users were buying gold using real money to gamble here. Buying gold is explicitly against the game rules, and Jagex had been trying to stop players from doing it for a while. Many of the websites players bought gold from were stealing players' credit cards, buying membership on a bunch of accounts using those stolen credit cards, and then botting on those accounts to generate more gold that they could then sell. When a player realized their card was stolen, they'd call the credit card company and get their money back. This meant there were a lot of chargebacks coming from Jagex's site, and credit card companies weren't happy about it. If Jagex didn't fix it, even though it wasn't even really their fault, credit card companies would stop working with them. So Jagex would need to make some big changes to prevent real-world trading. The first step was on November 20th, 2007. Jagex would adjust the Duel Arena to have a cap on how much you could win. Players were now limited to a maximum gain of 3,000 GP every 15 minutes.
I don't really want this.
At best, you could win 12,000 GP an hour at the Duel Arena. Seeing as how much of a key part Rares played in the Duel Arena, they would decline in the following days. But this update wasn't enough to curb real-world trading, so the following week, Jagex would take another drastic measure. On the 26th of November,
Guys, hear me out. I got an idea. Well, I'm at the Yagek meeting, right? I'm like, listen, all this money is going around from the bots and the players in the party hats. I got an idea. Let's shut it all down. Delete the GE, get rid of trading. Bingo! And everybody was like, good idea. Let's shut it down. That's what actually happened.
the Grand Exchange was released, a trading system where you could buy and sell just about every tradable item in the game. Previously, all trades were done player to player. This new system was more convenient, limited the ability for players to manipulate prices, and reduced scamming by a lot. Most players loved this update, but Jagex would upset them just a week later when trade restrictions were put in place to try and further curb real-world trading. These restrictions made it impossible.
Yo, hot take. I liked RuneScape before the Grand Exchange. I'm actually not in favor of auction houses. I think that it was a really cool OG experience to have to go and sell your own stuff. I just liked it. I thought it was that was really old school. It made me feel like I had to go work to actually sell some stuff. I liked it.
Possible to trade any item of value unless the player you were trading with also traded you an item of equal or similar value. These values were decided by the Grand Exchange prices of items that Jagex had set when it launched. This was really annoying. You could no longer give your friends gifts or borrow a buddy's gear for a Slayer task, but at least now you could buy a party hat on the Grand Exchange without fear of getting merged or scammed, right? Well, yes, but actually no. Jagex messed up and party hats were actually impossible to buy or sell on the Grand Exchange. This is where things get weird. Jagex had set the prices of party hats too high when the Grand Exchange launched. The launch of the Grand Exchange and removal of free trade made them crash much harder than Jagex expected. As a result, the price for a blue party hat on the Grand Exchange was way higher than what players actually valued it at. The Grand Exchange listed a blue party hat at 380 million gold, but in players' minds, it was only really worth about 200. Now, that might not seem like much of a problem if you know how the Grand Exchange works today. If it's worth 200 mil, even if the price says 380, put in an offer for 200, and if someone is selling at that price, it should buy anyway, right? The listed price would, over time, correct down to its actual value of 200 mil. Well, things worked differently in 2007. So Jagex's blue party hat set to 380 mil, right? If you put in an offer of 200 mil, your offer would never actually complete, because all offers back then had to be within 5% of the item's current Grand Exchange price. 200 mil would be way too low of an offer, even if that's what the player base felt the item should be priced at. So if everyone values the blue party hat at 200 mil and Jagex says no, it's 380, then what happens? Well, nobody can buy and sell them on the Grand Exchange. Players would go back to the old-fashioned way of trading, player to player. Because of the trade restrictions, they would now have to pad their trades with junk items. These are items that the Grand Exchange valued highly, but were actually fairly useless. So, to buy a blue party hat, you'd give the seller 200 million gold and 180 million gold worth of junk. If this sounds like a terrible system, it's because it is, but it was the player's only option. Imagine you pull up to a Ferrari dealership, hand the dealer a check for 200k, and then you have your buddy in a U-Haul dump 300 pounds of Beanie Babies on their lot. In this world, the dealer would happily shake your hand, hand you the keys, and you'd be on your way. Party hats had become a pretty unappealing item. Getting enough junk to be able to buy one was a huge task, especially when you needed so much of it. They were even considered untradable for a while because of this. Owners were more or less stuck with this unsellable, useless paper crown. Although it wasn't all bad times for them. In July of 2008, Jagex introduced the lending feature. You could temporarily lend an item to another player for up to 72 hours, with no risk of being scammed. When time was up, the item would return to your account. Around this time, rare item owners would make decent money lending out their items for a small fee. I personally remember paying a couple $100K to borrow a Santa hat back then for about 4 hours. Good use of money? No, but I sure looked cool in that RuneScape music video that I never finished making. As a result of nobody using the GE to trade party hats, their prices would stay exactly the same for months. For nearly a year, the blue party hat was listed at 380 million gold on the Grand Exchange. In September of 2008, Jagex decided it was finally time to fix their pricing. On September 29th, they would adjust the Grand Exchange and party hats would slowly start moving downwards closer to their street price. But how would they actually start moving in the first place? This part is just a theory, but I think if nobody bought or sold a party hat on that day using the GE, their prices would be lowered by 1%. This would happen until players would begin using the Grand Exchange to trade them again. Throughout the rest of 2008 and early 2009, party hat Grand Exchange prices would slowly sink until they met the street prices in value.
Nice.
In July, the blue party hat would bottom out at 300 million gold and begin to slowly rise again. It would do this all the way until February of 2011, where it would reach a whopping 700 million gold. An insane number, but things were about to get even crazier. Jagex announced that the trade restrictions were going to be lifted. Along with this, they would make some massive changes to the Grand Exchange. The item price that showed when you went to buy or sell an item would now just be Jagex's suggested price. Players could buy and sell their items for whatever price they wanted.
And this is how the exchange is
their
now.
Offer would be inactive. Even if Jagex suggested an item was worth 100 coins, you could sell it for 500, so long as someone was willing to pay that much for it. All of a sudden, they'd absolutely explode in price faster than ever before. Before the end of the year, the blue party hat reached an insane price of 2.147 billion gold, the maximum amount of gold that you could hold at a time. This was really exciting.
There was a gold cap back then? 2 billion?
But would also cause a big problem for players looking to buy or sell one, which I'll cover in depth in a moment. For now,
there's a gold cap now? Wait, for real? Like the max cash stack you could have is 2 bill? So I didn't know this. This is news to me. So, but you could have as much. Oh, that's why Odablock has 50 T-bows. Because he can't hold all the money in gold. I'm understanding now. You could have multiple stacks. You can do platinum tokens. That's why you buy third age pickaxe on the streets. Damn. People on the GE, used to use the GE to store mash cash stacks. I didn't know any of this, dude. I've never had that much cash stack before. That's crazy. Okay. All right, we're learning stuff today.
Jagex would ignore this problem and do something crazy. They had mentioned in the past that they had no plans to introduce more discontinued tradable rare items into the game due to the headache it caused both developers and players. But Jagex back then wasn't exactly known for keeping their promises. For the first time in nearly a decade, they would begin releasing new limited time rare items. The first of which was the fish mask. Remember this thing? No? Yeah, I don't blame you, it's hideous. Now, I'm not really sure why they would release a discontinued rare item after all this time. Oh, it could only be obtained from the Squeal of Fortune, their new microtransaction-based minigame. They would also release the Black Santa hat.
Yo, W Jagex getting rid of microtransactions.
hat in 2013, maybe to try and lure people back to the game after a certain update, but it was too late. Most players who loved the now very nostalgic holiday items were on the newly released old school RuneScape, where these items were basically worthless. So if you're somebody who's only played old school RuneScape and never played the original RuneScape and you're like, why is he making a big deal about these? They're worth like 3K. That's why. If you want to know why they're so worthless in old school, I'll link the video I made about that at the end. Now, why was the blue party hat reaching max cash such an issue? Well, first of all, it could no longer be traded on the Grand Exchange. It's impossible to buy or sell an item for more than the max cash limit, so players would return to the old way of doing business once again. Player-to-player trades. They would use an item called spirit shards as currency. Spirit shards can be bought and sold for 25 GP each from an NPC, making it a really solid store of value. They'll always be worth 25 GP each. If you were holding a max stack of shards, you were technically holding 53 billion gold.
Damn.
Problem solved. Except leaving the cozy convenience of the Grand Exchange led to an old problem coming back. Price manipulation would return in full swing. Rich players could once again hoard the stock and set prices at whatever level they wanted much more easily. By 2015, Christmas crackers and every other party hat had passed max cash too. Jagex knew this was a problem, but for now they couldn't do anything. The max cash stack was a technical limitation that would need some major changes to the game in order to increase. So for now, they did nothing, and as you probably expected, street prices of party hats would climb higher and higher than ever before. In the meantime, in 2021, Jagex would release a new party hat
7
to
billion.
celebrate RuneScape's 20th year anniversary, the Golden Party Hat. This would be a limited time item, and like the other party hats, would never release again and is tradable. Overall, the player base's reaction to this was relatively positive, and it seemed to bring back a number of old players hoping to snag this soon-to-be discontinued item. Over the next few years, they would go crazy with limited time rare items. They would also release the green Santa hat the same year and the purple Halloween mask in 2022. Although, unlike the golden party hat, Jagex has mentioned that the green Santa could return at a later date and made no mention of if the purple Halloween mask was discontinued or not. I'm not going to start tracking the prices of these in this video because it's really the same story for all of them. They would start out at really high prices and then crash significantly because, well, none of them are really all that rare right now. And honestly, with how many people are hoarding them, they might never be. Now, as for the original holiday items, around this time, the Christmas cracker would take back its rank 1 spot and surpass the blue party hat. If I had to guess, this happened because there are so few that are left unopened. But both of these items had become so valuable that they couldn't be bought with spirit shards alone anymore. So lower valued rares would become another type of currency. You would use the rares to buy the rares. Prices had gotten so high that for the average player, no matter how hard they grinded or how many bosses they killed, they would never be able to afford a party hat. Jagex realized this, and on a live stream about the game's economy, said that party hats had really just become a mercher's playground. They were right. Earlier that year, merchants were shortly able to manipulate the blue party hat street price to 302.5 billion gold. Let's say you wanted to buy one using real money without getting banned. In 2013, Jagex introduced bonds, items which you could buy with real money and then redeem for membership or sell to other players on the Grand Exchange for GP. At the time, bonds were $6.99 USD and sold for 49.8 million GP each. In total, to buy a blue party hat using only bonds at its peak, you'd be spending about $42,500. Jagex knew that it was finally time to tackle the max cash problem. On June 12, 2023, Jagex would increase the maximum number of coins that could be traded on the Grand Exchange from 2.147 billion to 2.147 quintillion. All of a sudden, party hats and crackers could be traded on the Grand Exchange again, and their actual prices would fall hard. In a few weeks, they would all lose 10 to 20% of their value, mainly because they were that overvalued.
Damn. So using the Grand Exchange just completely tanked the price of it because they were more open to tradability, and that reduced the demand for them. Damn. They were a way to store wealth because they couldn't fake the price. No mafia to control the price.
valued by merchants who had manipulated their prices. In the following months, they would release more tradable holiday items, like the Black Party Hat, Purple Santa Hat, and Orange Halloween Mask, although their prices would follow a similar trend of the other tradable holiday items from years prior. And that's where we are today. As it stands, the Blue Party Hat is worth a whopping 85 billion gold, or $6,000 in today's bond prices, and is in good company with the other original party hats. Although prices have stagnated a bit since being able to be traded on the Grand Exchange again, they'll seemingly go nowhere but up long term, as long as RuneScape 3 has players who want them and inflation continues. Check out the video on the right to find out how old school's party hats went from expensive coveted items to basically worthless.
Okay, so check this out, guys. If the Blue Party Hat is worth, how much did he just say?
The Blue Party Hat is
85 billion. If you were to take old school RuneScape player base and put them all into RuneScape 3, it would inflate the player base by like, what, times 10? Because there's 10 times more people that play OSRS. And that'd be 10 times more people playing the game, which would inflate the economy. And then it would also increase the demand for those items, which would probably inflate the demand and the cost of the Blue Party Hats. Damn. So it's not even like that like super popular of a game. If more people were playing, it would actually be worth more than that. That's crazy. Right now it's worth six. This was a year ago. It was worth $6,000 a year ago. How much money is a T-bow? What's the most expensive like item? Third age pickaxe? A third age pickaxe trades on the auction house for how much? 13 billion. So how much is 13 billion when converted into like a calculator worth? That's a million. That's a billion. Or is this million? I don't know. How many bonds? How many bonds? How much is a bond worth? What is it? Like a bond is 13 million per bond? 15 million for a bond? 13 million. Okay, so we divide this by 13 million. Oh, it's 1,000. 1,000 bonds. 1,000 bonds. And a bond is how much money? $8? Oh, so third age pickaxe is $8,000. A third age pickaxe is $8,000. W math. Damn. All right, boys. All you got to do is get a third age pickaxe and you made an instant $8,000 in the game. That is crazy. I would absolutely real world trade. You guys, don't real world trade. You'll lose your account. Okay? That's a bad boy right there. I will finish the video. It's got like 1 second left.
Worth a whopping 85 billion gold, or $6,000 in today's bond prices, and is in good company with the other original party hats. Although prices have stagnated a bit since being able to be traded on the Grand Exchange again, they'll seemingly go nowhere but up long term, as long as RuneScape 3 has players who want them and inflation continues. Check out the video on the right to find out how old school's party hats went from expensive coveted items to basically worthless. Thanks for watching.
Dude, Canelo makes banger videos, dude. Canelo, like one of the best like RuneScape documentary guys there is, man. He's amazing at it. Really awesome content creator, that Canelo guy.